budget is a big one. And it's really hard. It's like chicken before the egg. Well, I want a 3 carat, but I don't know how much that costs, or I want to spend 20,000, but I don't know what that will get me. And that's where the research piece of it is really important. And I think right now there are so many resources online to at least get that ballpark sense of where you fall when you have X budget or this is the size that you're looking for.
Loverly presents the Wedding Podcast, a show for those on the road to ideal. From relationship advice to wedding planning tips, we break it down. I'm your host, Kelly Khalil, bride-to-be and the founder of Loverly, a DIY wedding planning platform. Over the years, we've helped tens of thousands of couples get down the aisle. And now that it's my turn, I'm not holding back. I'm bringing in my besties, wedding pros, and some brides-to-be you may know to talk through everything from picking the perfect venue to mastering your relationship. It's time to plan smarter so you can focus on the happily ever after. You've got the ring, we've got the rest. Hey Loverlies, this week we have Stephanie Gottlieb on the podcast. She is the founder of Stephanie Gottlieb Fine Jewelry and has been in the industry since 2013. As an Instagram sensation, her fine jewelry, curated rainbow-colored pics have been splashed all over your feeds. She's worked with celebrities like Britney Spears and the who's who of the New York elites. We're going to talk all about what's most important when buying your ring, what led to her Instagram and business success, and some heartwarming stories about her own engagement and destination wedding in Mexico. I hope you guys like it. Today on the podcast, we have Stephanie Gottlieb, and I'm excited to chat with Stephanie because I feel like over the years of just living on social media, I have come across her hand dazzled in rainbow, a plethora of rainbow rings and diamonds, and I feel like we've been in the same circle for a while, so I'm excited to finally connect with you and learn all about your business, how you got started, and maybe you can spill the tea on some of your celebrity clients that you've been working with.
We'll see how much I can share. But thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Amazing. So let's start from the beginning. I feel like there's been a movement with the emergence of, I would say, the woman jeweler who has a fresh perspective and are undoubtedly dominating, right? The engagement ring, the fashion jewelry industry, and you are definitely one of those powerhouses. How did you get into all this?
Well, thank you. So I started in the industry right out of college. I took an internship with a traditional 47th Street diamond wholesale company. And I really had the opportunity to learn so much about the wholesale part of the business. It was a small company, so I really wore lots of different hats. Um, Everything from sales to marketing, design. I got to touch a bit of it all. And this was supposed to be an internship that lasted just 2 months. And instead, I stayed at that company for 5 years because
Wow.
I loved it. I really didn't intend to fall into jewelry, but once I did, there was no leaving. I loved everything about diamonds, the science behind it, the romance behind jewelry, and it just kind of captured me. So that was my entry to the industry. I was there for 5 years, and at some point, I think I just hit a wall and I was doing things that didn't feel organic to my styling and my personal aesthetic. And that was really what kind of forced me to take a risk and try doing something on my own.
So when you say traditional 42nd or 47th Street
Yes.
jeweler,
All right.
you're referring to a region or a set of streets in New York City where like all of the diamond business basically goes down.
Yes. So the New York City Diamond District is 47th between 5th and 6th Avenues. It has changed a lot over the years, even in the last 10 years that I've been a part of the business. Um, and it's funny, I remember before I was in jewelry, I remember always avoiding the street because there were always people sort of heckling you for
Mm-hmm.
buying or selling. And do you want to take a look at our diamonds? And so The wholesale part of the diamond world is really not sexy at all.
It
And
feels almost
that's
kind of sketchy if you're
it
on that
it
street.
can
It feels
it
like, yeah.
can. And that was really a huge driving factor in me leaving and doing something on my own, because that is how it felt. And obviously there's this much more beautiful, exciting part of the business too. And I think with social media, it was easier to share that piece of it and kind of hide the down and dirty that you would encounter if you walk down 47th Street. That really is the heart and soul of New York City jewelry making and diamonds. So if you love jewelry and you're in diamonds, you have to be there, you have to be in it. But it did feel a little bit seedy, and I didn't want what I was doing to feel that way. So I think I brought a new kind of fresh female perspective, and I was able to curate it on Instagram in a way that did appeal to so many people.
Well, Instagram is all about that aesthetic, right? And
Yes,
curating the beautiful moments of, which makes it seem like working in diamonds is super glamorous, which I'm sure there are very glamorous parts of it, but it also is
absolutely.
a full business. You've also been blessed with incredible nail beds, which I feel like also helped with your ability to, because I feel like many of your photos and your styling of jewelry has gone viral, and that's part of how your business blew up, right? Like on Instagram, on the Discover page or Explore page, oftentimes that's where you'll stumble upon. Um, so there has to be something to do with the hands. It's not just the jewelry.
Certainly, never imagined I was going to be a hand model, but I don't think it hurt that, I guess I have some nice nails and long fingers, and I can fit a ton of rings on them. So it's definitely good for stacking.
So you go out on your own. Did you ever have the intention that your business would have the reach and the customer base that it has today, or was that a more organic unfolding?
Never. I mean, this was 2013. So really, Instagram was just taking off as a platform, let alone as a platform for businesses. I mean, that didn't really happen till, maybe 2 years later. Um, so, I think it was a combination of things. Timing was great. Obviously, a lot of hard work went into it, but I got to ride the wave of Instagram success. And that's really how I built the business and how I was able to reach so many new eyes that when I started, I had no idea the magnitude of the power of the social media platform. So I couldn't have planned this.
And I think you have a unique point of view in that it's very colorful. You found a way to pair really bright and fun stones together in this kind of, I don't want to, I don't know if you think rainbow bright is a bad analogy, but I love that as a child of the 80s. Just kind of this very whimsical, fun, and very, I would say, feminine kind of
Yeah,
aesthetic of bringing in a bunch of fun colors into stone. So I feel like that became a niche that I knew you for, and I feel like many of your followers, you also have like a lot of rainbow clothing. Can you please
I
talk about this
do.
whole, okay.
I do. You know what? Rainbow has just always been something that made me happy. And like rainbow, jewelry really is something that should make you happy. You should look down at your ring and smile, or, hold your pendant and kind of remember who gave it to you or the moment that it commemorates. And so, in that same way, it's really celebratory. And wearing rainbow makes me happy. And the same with jewelry. When I have a really beautiful piece that means something special to me, that makes me happy. So that's what it's all about. And it wasn't within any intention. I think I- I'm also an 80s baby, and, lucky for me, the Lisa Frank Rainbow Explosion came into
Yes.
style over the last few years, but this was always very organic to my heart. You should look at my closet. I mean, it's just full of color.
I was also going to ask you, did you start in the fashion jewelry side, or was it more on bespoke engagement rings? Because you have a full fashion collection, which is what, again, I see all the time popping up on the feed, which is accessible but still high quality kind of fashion jewelry. Which one did you start with? And what's your bigger part of your business? I'm curious.
Great question. So, when I was working for the diamond wholesale company, I was managing their finished jewelry collection. So that was really my area of expertise. That being said, all the while I was learning about diamonds and trying to understand the science of them. When I left the business, I was 25. I had just gotten married. And so I was in this phase of life where all of my friends were about to get engaged. And it really was the most opportune moment to kind of get myself up to speed with diamond education and be that resource for my friends as they were shopping. So bridal was a much bigger part of my business when I started, and it was my day-to-day priority to meet with private clients, show them stones, and build a custom setting for them. Over the years, as we've scaled, the fashion part of the business has become much more meaningful. And as we look forward over the next 10 years, we will never lose bridal. Bridal is my baby and what, really where I fell in love with this industry. But fashion is fun and it changes faster and you can do more with it, and certainly you can reach more people because there's only a certain subset of people who need bridal and at a very
Mm-hmm.
specific time in their lives. Um so for me, they're not separate things. They really do feed each other. The girl who got engaged is now getting, then gets married and then has children and then needs anniversary and push gift and all of those things, so they really do marry one another. Um, but looking forward, fashion will be a big focus for me, at least in the next 2 years.
And what is the price point for most of your fashion jewelry? Because a lot of it is accessible, but it's still
Absolutely.
fine jewelry, right? So what is,
Yes.
give me like a range.
So really we have everything from 200 up to 200,000, and that is with intention. We have a very multi-generational collection and a multi-generational following. And so I've never wanted anyone to feel isolated. I always want every girl to feel like she can see herself in Stephanie Gottlieb. And that will also be a priority going forward. I've done my own photography for the past 10 years, and I saved a ton of money not hiring models, but at this point in the brand, and in our growth, I think it's really important for the girl to be able to imagine herself. So different skin tones, different shapes, different sizes, different ages. I think that's an important part of our growth so that other women can see themselves wearing the jewelry, not just people who maybe look like me.
And how, like, what is that, the average like demo for your customer? You said multi-generational. Is it like the brides and their moms, their bridesmaids? Like, what are you
Right.
typically seeing?
So we have the 25 to 35-year-old girl that is our core. But then her mom is like our next tier, the 50 to 70-year-old women. And it's so funny that they resonate with the same exact pieces. So rainbow hits both of those groups, maybe in slightly different ways, but I have 65-year-old women attend our live events decked head to toe in rainbow. And it's almost like they finally feel seen, like somebody else
Mm-hmm.
appreciates that inner child moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice. There's a really strong community of us.
So it's a great opportunity to gift like mother of the groom, your future in-laws,
Absolutely.
a
And
piece,
there's
something special.
it doesn't have to be a serious piece of jewelry for someone to appreciate it. I mean, we have little chain bracelets or something that says mom, or, perhaps it's something with a date or a birthstone. All of those things are so meaningful. And, just because you're 60 and have beautiful major jewelry doesn't mean you wouldn't appreciate something dainty and small like that as a little memento.
I want to go back a little bit because you brushed over the fact that 25 years old, you got married, which I feel
Yes,
like is quite young when now looking at our average brides are like in their early 30s.
you're right.
Um, so you were in the jewelry industry working more on like the wholesale side of things. Like, what was that like picking out your own ring? Like, what was that negotiation with your now husband?
Okay, so to be fair, my husband and I are high school sweethearts. We
Okay.
basically lived together throughout high school. We went to college together. We graduated and moved in. So at that point, we had already been together for 10 years. It was time to
Wow.
get married. Um, so 25 didn't seem that young then. I was in it, but none of my friends had been engaged. And so I wasn't even envisioning marriage in my life. Like it wasn't an immediate. need or want for me. We had been together for so long. So I always had mood boards just because we always do, right? So my
After 10 years,
desktop,
girl, I hope you would have one.
my desktop at the time, desktop, yes, was filled with pictures of rings that I liked. And over the time, I would sort of trash the ones that no longer resonated with me, or that, like, maybe at work I had made so many of this style that no longer was it interesting to me. And so at the time when my husband was ready, I was very into rose gold. I still am. I'm only in the last like 6 months I've started wearing yellow gold again, but for 10 years I wore only rose exclusively.
Mm.
Um,
Goes well with rainbow.
it does. And also it was different. Nobody was doing rose gold 10 years ago. It felt like the least obvious choice, which is why I wanted it. So there was a split shank rose gold ring that I loved, and that was the picture that was on our shared computer. So he took that to my boss and said, "This is what she wants. Help me make it happen." And they did. And I had no idea. It was a complete surprise. I was not involved at all.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
So, but you dropped a really big hint. I mean, you had
I
it on
did. I
what,
mean,
desktop backdrop.
I spoon fed it to him, but yes.
And tell me about your proposal and your engagement. You said that you were surprised. Give us the breakdown.
Okay. So, I mean, this is very on brand for jewelry, but my husband knew I wanted rose gold. He also knew that I didn't have any rose gold, and I am a very matchy person. Like I'm Queen Elizabeth with, purple hat, purple suit, purple shoes. That's just how I like to be. So he knew that if I was getting the rose gold ring, I would want something else in rose gold. And so he proposed with a Cartier bracelet. Um, and I opened it up first thing in the morning, and it said BG Heart SG, April 26, 2012. And I said, "What's April 26?" And he said, "It's the day I asked you to marry me." And then he had the ring. So it
Oh
was
my
like
gosh.
it was a really nice moment. And obviously, this comes back to the point that jewelry really does hold sentimental value. So for me, that bracelet is almost more of a reminder than the ring itself of that moment. Um, and then of course I went on to like hunt for bags that had rose gold hardware, and it became a whole obsession. But yeah, that was the short story.
And so how soon after you were engaged did your friends start to get engaged? Because I feel like it happens in waves, like groups
Yes.
of friends. It's like
Yeah.
almost like the flu. It's super contagious. Like once one friend goes, it's like they start popping off.
Right. So I would say like a year after I got married, then another, then another. We all kind of like had, 6 months to a year in between us. And all of us had started relationships at different times. So obviously the timelines were different, but the girls always go first and then the guys. Like my husband's friends didn't get married until 5 to 10 years after all of us did.
Mm-hmm. And so you said that your friends were kind of like your first customers. Was it the girls coming to you, or was it their future husbands that were coming to you for advice?
It
And
was
how
their
did that
future
work?
husbands. And I think it's tricky because a lot of people don't want to mix business and pleasure. And now I understand that. Back then I didn't. Now I do, because it's hard to work with friends. If one
Mm-hmm.
thing goes wrong, it can become a problem. So
Mm-hmm.
two of my best friends, then boyfriends, came to me like first, and then, later others. But it was so heartwarming to not only have their trust, but to be a part of that process and to make sure, I really got to advocate for them and choose what I would have wanted if I was in their shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really special for me. And
How did you keep it secret? I mean, that must have been killing you. If it's like your best friend and you're like helping design the ring.
it definitely was. And also the fact that I was the only one on the inside and I couldn't tell anybody else. None of the other friends knew. So I don't know. I don't really remember in that moment how hard it was to not share the secret, but I think I've become good at keeping those types of secrets.
Okay, now it's your full-time job.
It really is. I really get the inside scoop.
So going from just helping your friends and like your close circle to, you know, passing 100,000, 200,000 followers on Instagram, when did you start to have strangers reaching out? about buying an engagement ring or working with you? And what was that from when you first went out on your own?
Right. So I would say the first year and a half of the business was my inner circle, like true word of mouth, my friends, their friends, cousins, family, etc. Um, and then, I think I hit like maybe 10,000 followers. That was a pretty big threshold because at that point it was, my friend in Chicago would pick up the phone and call me and be like, this girl I work with is following you on Instagram. And there was this like crazy moment of like my networks now knew who I was.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it took about a year and a half to get to gain trust, and B, feel big enough that someone from out of state would be willing to work with me remotely, never having met me, send a wire and hope for the best.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think there is what Instagram was so wonderful for, and continues to this day, is that it is sort of that, stamp of approval that you are legitimate and that there's a real person behind the brand. And I mean, even to this day, I still answer my own DMs. So you really are
Wow.
speaking with me regardless of who you are, how big or small your order is going to be. You might just be asking where I got that, lamp. But I do try and answer most of my DMs. So there was that direct line of communication, and I think that helped people feel like they could trust the process without really knowing who I was.
So at like 10,000 followers is all of a sudden when it was like people were reaching out to work with you.
Yes.
And now, I mean, you're in the hundreds of thousands, and I feel like your brand has transcended just jewelry. A lot of people follow you for home decor, fashion, and also, you share parts of your life along the way, right? I think how many kids do you have? 2 kids?
I have 2 little kids. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, Instagram is this unique beast where you're sort of rewarded. The more you share, the more people want to engage with you. And so, this wave of the influencer that we've had for the past 10 years, I got swept into it. And I do think that it really did help me build the business because it helped people understand who the person behind the business was. And I really believe that a consumer wants to support a brand that they really feel aligned with, the morals and values of the person who runs that business. And I think that sharing my life gave people that insight that maybe they don't get with a more corporate business that doesn't have a face or a personality to it.
How does your husband feel about it?
He encourages me to be completely present on social because he knows it, that's what the people want. I'm definitely more reserved. I think that's something people are surprised to learn about me, is that
It's
I'm
not surprising because so many influencers, when you meet them in person, like are so timid and shy,
yes,
and they're just great behind a camera, but like in
exactly.
real life they get
It's
shy.
hard. I'm an introvert, and all of a sudden, like, speaking to my phone allowed me to reach so many people, but in my ordinary life, I would never be so outgoing and so chatty.
You
It just
feel
happens.
protected.
I do, and I also happen to love what I do, and I feel passionate about jewelry and diamonds, and it's easy for me to talk about all of this.
So would you share details about your actual wedding then and your wedding planning process? Because it was quite a while ago for the people who follow you. Like, do you ever like reshare and repost the wedding
I
details?
I give like a rehash every anniversary. This was my 10 year, so I think I recapped a little bit. I went back to where I got married at the banyan tree in Riviera Maya and gave people a little glimpse. It was kind of before Instagram was a thing. I mean, my hashtag, like, if you look at my hashtag, I
Love a
think
hashtag.
there's 5 pictures. So yeah, I never really had that moment. I think it would be a lot harder to plan a wedding now with all of the content, and to really like not only
Inspiration
filter
overload.
through the inspiration, but also to consider like how much you want to share and how much you're doing just for content versus for yourself and for the things that you really care about. So I can imagine it's pretty tricky to be a bride right now.
So you had a destination wedding then in Mexico?
I did, yes. We got
And
married in
did you
Mexico. It
Did you
was,
hire a planner?
we had a planner from New York who had worked with my family for a long time, so she knew us well. She didn't know the property well, so we went down there a bunch of times. Um, I mean, it was really fun. I love a destination wedding. I don't know anybody who doesn't. It's just a great moment for so many people to be together and to make it more about just that one day, but like the whole extended weekend experience.
And looking back on your wedding, what was like your now I know getting married is the highlight and this is the wedding planning podcast. So I want to hear your favorite parts of the actual planning. Was it your dress? Was it your floral? Was it the where did you splurge and what did you love the most about it?
I think we splurged in making it a full weekend experience. So, we didn't go overboard with flowers for the wedding itself because we had beautiful florals the entire weekend. Because I think florals are a really important part of the experience. They can add so much texture and life to the atmosphere. I mean, we had the most beautiful welcome party that got completely rained out, but it was still
Oh, wow.
beautiful. We shifted everything inside. Um, and each event really had its own personality. Like our welcome party was oranges and pinks and really bright and floral and kind of speaking to Mexico. Our Friday night dinner, which was a Shabbat dinner, was kind of it was in the mangrove, so like we did like a very Latin vibe. My family's from Cuba originally, so we kind of brought elements of that in there. I wore like a sparkly leopard situation, jungle vibes. One of the highlights, actually, and this was the most unplanned moment of the wedding, and I think sometimes you find the beauty in those moments, but we did, those wish lanterns that you make a wish and then they go up into the air.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we did one of those right after our Shabbat dinner, and I didn't know we were doing that. And it just, I don't know, it was so special in that moment. And then we had this like really fun beach bonfire with s'mores and just kind of like everyone was wearing sweatpants and just relaxing together. And those are the things I think sometimes you miss when you don't have a destination because everyone's in one place and staying in the same place. It was really special. But again, like the unplanned moment.
How many people did you invite?
We were 200 people in Mexico. Keep
Oh,
in
wow.
mind, I have a huge family, and also it was the first wedding of all of my friends. So everyone wanted to be there. It was
Mm-hmm.
January. Everybody wanted to get out of New York. So it
Mm-hmm.
was, just the combination of all those factors.
And your mutual friend list was probably really high since you've been together for 10 years.
Exactly. Exactly right.
That's amazing. I mean, I love the idea of a destination for that. Like, I had my own engagement party back in October, and I did it in LA, but we live in New York. So but my whole family's in Los Angeles, grew up in Los Angeles, but so many friends flew in for it. And like, even my best friend flew in from the UK where she lives. And I was kind of bummed that after like 5 hours, which is a long party, right? And it felt, for all intents and purposes, like a wedding. But at the end of it, I'm like, oh man, like, you want to just keep going or you want to see them the next day, right? And
Right,
so,
totally.
yeah. And so I think the destination gives you the opportunity to have multiple little moments of celebration and seeing them because it goes by so fast.
It does. But you also have to keep in mind, my brother is planning his wedding right now and they're getting married in Italy. And we're all so excited, but also we have older grandparents now who probably
Mm-hmm.
won't make it. And so that is a huge consideration. I think it depends on what the couple's priority is. If it's to have every single person you love there, then you may have to make some different decisions.
Yeah, my fiance's Yaya, which is Greek for grandma, she's like 85, and unfortunately, she wasn't able to come out, which
Right.
was a bummer. So we're trying to figure out for the actual wedding a place and time where it'd be easy for her. But I am the worst planner of all planners because I don't have a wedding day. But it's kind of like the what do they say? The shoe cobbler's kids has no shoes or whatever the
Exactly.
cobbler's.
I
It's
totally
basically.
resonate with that.
So your brother's getting married. I mean, what was that? Were you just kind of like, is this your older brother or younger brother?
This is my younger brother. So we made the ring obviously together. I think he was one of my toughest clients to
I was gonna
date.
say, did you just boss him around and be like, this is what you need to get?
Well, he didn't want my advice. He wanted to do it himself, and he kind of thought he knew better than I did. So I was a facilitator. I will give him credit. He really did his research. I like gave him my login for RapNet. I was like, go for it. You pick the stone, I'll bring it in, and we'll just, do it your way. He did. He picked a great stone with a vendor I had never worked with before, and it turned out beautiful.
So you've worked with your family and friends, but you've also worked with some pretty big name celebrities, and
Yeah.
one of them, which I have to bring up, which I know we spoke about this previously, can't share much, but you know, going to high school in the 2000s, I had my belly button pierced and my low-rise jeans and my crop top, and I was dancing to Britney. She was like the icon.
Yeah.
And you did her wedding last year.
We did. We had the pleasure of working with Brittany and Sam for their wedding bands. It was a major moment. You really, knock on wood, God willing, I hope we have future moments like that, but I think it will be hard to top the 90s icon. Um, that was my first real experience with celebrity. I flew out myself to meet with her and, make sure the bands fit and figure out what jewelry she was going to wear on the wedding day. So it was an experience altogether, but I think, when you think of like top 5 names that everybody on the planet knows, I'm pretty sure she's one of them.
Amazing. And how long did you work with her was it like a last minute thing, or were you working with her for months leading up to it?
It wasn't super last minute, but it wasn't months. It was, I want to say it was like 2 or 3 months out, as they were kind of finalizing plans. And then, as you know, things always change last minute. So we were just super flexible and made it work. I think our jeweler made a ring in like 10 days. So.
Wow. Well, that was one of the weddings that even though she had been engaged for a while, when the news came out that she got married, it was kind of shocking, right? Like it happened. They kept it really under wraps. So I'm wondering, like, the NDA situation.
Even now, I can't really share too many details, which is unfortunate because I would love to. But they kept it completely quiet until like the day before. I think paparazzi got a heads up and they were kind of flying overhead. But yeah, it was crazy.
So cool. Well, moving on to the everyday bride and groom, which is not the Britneys and Sams of the world.
Yeah.
What are you seeing now as far as trends in engagement rings, and how has it changed from 10 years ago?
So I think that brides right now have so much content available to them. So they are coming in with a very strong opinion and, detailed opinions on what they want, what they like, what they don't like. And I think that's really because there's just so much more access. Before you would go on a Tiffany's or whatever website, see whatever pictures they had, the 3 standard, angles, top, side, bottom, and say, this is what I like. And, whatever the budget can allow, get me the biggest stone. Like that was kind of the trend when I started this. Now it's, I like this, but I want this, and can you make the prongs like this, and I want the band this thick. They know a lot more. And so on the one hand, that's really helpful because it guides our process, and it means that the girl who's wearing it ends up with something she loves. On the other hand, it becomes more difficult. It's like too many cooks in the kitchen sometimes.
It's like they know too much.
A little bit, yes. And it also can drive their partner a little bit crazy, trying to make sure that they get it all right. So, style-wise, bridal is bridal. I mean, there's always going to be some new styles, metal colors, trend over time. Right now, we're seeing a lot of yellow gold, but kind of back to platinum, which is always the traditional choice. Rose gold has really fizzled, but, 8 years ago, rose was a majority of what I was doing, and maybe because I was showing it so much on my own jewelry. A lot more chunky settings, um, a lot of bezel settings. We're seeing a lot of brides use green emeralds instead of diamonds. So it's been an interesting shift, but nothing crazy or major away from like the classics.
You mentioned the partners, and I'm curious, in your specific business, what percentage of the time are you speaking to just the ring purchaser, so not the wearer, whether that's, the groom or,
Right.
the other bride? Like, what percentage of the time is it just the person who's gifting the ring versus the two of them, or the wearer coming to you first? Like, what do you see normally?
I would say it's 70% the purchaser is coming to us, usually with instructions. 30% of the time they're coming together, at least for, an initial consultation to really try things on, figure out what they like, establish what the right carat range is for their budget, and then generally the purchaser will come back by his or herself to kind of finalize choices and complete a purchase. We used to see a lot of girls come in alone or come in with a girlfriend to try things on. I think we still do, but just given the nature of our business, because so much is bespoke and we're really making it for the wearer, we see girls just kind of communicating more with us via DM or via email, looking at our website and just using that as a resource.
What is something that you wish people knew before they started like reaching out, or they start buying they're on the hunt to buy their engagement ring?
I mean, there's so many things to know. I think budget is a big one. And it's really hard. It's like chicken before the egg. Well, I want a 3 carat, but I don't know how much that costs, or I want to spend 20,000, but I don't know what that will get me. And that's where the research piece of it is really important. And I think right now there are so many resources online to at least get that ballpark sense of where you fall when you have X budget, or this is the size that you're looking for. And that's where social media comes in for us, is educating our consumers so they understand what they should be looking for, where they can find value, if they only have a certain budget and they want to go bigger in size, what kinds of compromises should they make. Um, so that's the piece that I love about social media, is that we can really reach a customer and feed them the information they need before they come into the office.
You mentioned budget, which I think is obviously the hot topic when you're wedding planning. It's just like, what's your budget? Always starts with that. But and I feel like back in the day there was always the rule of the 3-month salary as a good kind of guardrail. Like, what are the budget range? And I'm sure you have people in the $1 million budget, but what do you see as the typical range of what people are spending these days with you?
I mean, I would say 30 is a good average, and we really are working on the daily with people who have a $15,000 budget, and then people who have a 60,000. That's the general range. We definitely have higher, we also have lower, and we try and accommodate everything above 5,000. That's really where our price point starts. But 30 is like a good average.
And do you work with couples who bring in like their own stone from?
We do.
Yeah, okay.
We do. We set stones in our settings. We always prefer to work with a client start to finish, but we understand, particularly when an heirloom stone is being used or whatever the situation is, we do always try and accommodate.
And what percentage of your couples go from ring to then also getting their bands with you? Is it a high percentage?
It's a very high percentage. I don't have that actual number, but it's very high. I mean, the only reason I can think of to not work with the same jeweler you bought your engagement ring from is, and what we do see is that for our non-local clients, they love Stephanie Gottlieb. They wanted their ring from us. There was a particular engagement ring that they really cared about. If the wedding band is something a little bit simpler, like a pave band or a diamond band, they may just go somewhere local, try it on, fall in love, and be done. And that's easy, and I totally understand that. But we do have a lot of more unique, brand identifiable bands, like our undecided band, for example, that features two different shapes together. And for a long time, we were doing our rainbow layouts with diamonds or the ombres of blue. So I think it's the more specific styles that people really want to come to Stephanie Gottlieb for. But we do it all, and I think most of our brides have such a good experience with us that they want to come back and do round two. The other reason to come buy the wedding band from us is that any bride who has purchased an engagement ring or band over $5,000 is a an SG Bride Perks member. So that means you are in our Bridal Perks program, and you get all these great perks, including complimentary jewelry loan for your wedding day. So we help style you in jewelry for the wedding day. Um, Discounts on the fashion jewelry. We have our perks partners, so that includes Amsala and Fleur de Mal, and Banyan Tree just joined. So we have some really great partners, and they also offer perks to our brides. So in addition to being part of the Stephanie Gottlieb family, we have, kind of this extended network of services and products that our brides are eligible for.
I love that, because part of the whole planning process is people get overwhelmed, and as much as things can be streamlined and simplified and curated, it makes it easier because you appreciate someone's curation and taste and aesthetic, right? Usually you're going to like kind of who else they recommend. So
absolutely.
And especially, Amsala is such a, classic, beautiful aesthetic. I would even say at this point, heritage designer in bridal. So that sounds like a great partnership and great alignment. Real quick, going back to your wedding bands, so I don't have my band yet. Haven't even looked at what it is. Obviously, stacking has become a huge thing where it's like you want multiple. Are you seeing most people just purchasing wedding bands kind of from your collection, or are people making bespoke wedding bands to fit with their rings? I feel like back in the day there was always those like interlocking ones. Remember how it's kind of like old school now, where like the diamond would be cut out to like clip in?
Yes, not my favorite.
Yeah.
So we have some really great, more stackable wedding band styles on our website that are click and buy, super easy, and they kind of work with any ring. Our bespoke bands are really in the $2,500 and plus range. And for that, I think it depends on what your engagement ring looks like and if it is a stackable style. Like a simple solitaire lends itself to stacking. A 3-stone ring doesn't really. So if you're not wearing the band and the engagement ring together, you have a lot more room for getting creative with what the band looks like, because you're probably wearing it on your other hand. So there are pros and cons to both.
Love that. Okay, real quick, as we're getting ready to wrap up, I want to know, what is the one trend when it comes to rings that you are ready to say bye-bye to?
Oh, I'm always careful when I say this because I don't want to make anybody feel bad.
Everyone gets like worried about it. Like, I'm like, just tell us if you could give someone a heads up that something might be going out of style and they're in the consideration set. Consider doing people a favor, not hurting people's feelings.
I'm like fighting myself on this. Last year 2-stone rings were very much trending. I have one. I've been wearing it for a couple years now, and I love and adore it. We have definitely seen that quiet down. People are going back to either a traditional 3-stone or just focusing on the solitaire. So I would say in terms of trendiness, the 2-stone ring is kind of fizzling. That being said, I still love it. It is very traditional style. It dates back to the 1700s, so it's not going anywhere, but it's definitely not as trendy as it was. And maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, 'cause it definitely was everywhere. I mean, I've spoken about this style that became super popular, Megan Fox.
Yeah.
Like, I think she was the one that like everyone became obsessed with. And then, yeah, and I don't think she's still engaged right now. I think.
Also, Emrata had it. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, and she also is no longer married.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Uh-oh, maybe.
I still
Maybe
have
it's a good
mine,
cocktail ring.
married, so.
No, but it's a good right hand ring. It's not your actual wedding ring. So maybe, we use that for your right hand ring.
Yeah.
What's a trend that you're really excited about? Something that you're seeing or you're hoping starts to kind of pick up?
I'm loving the chunky gold 70s vibe. I think it is so fun, so playful. I mean, listen, I have the advantage of being able to reset a ring whenever my heart desires because this is what I do all day. So it's easier for me to just change things up. Like I just reset my wedding band from rose to yellow and I bezel set it. But I'm seeing people leaning into things that really feature the metal color, and I think that's fun.
I love a chunky cigar ring. Like that's something that I need to get. And I've seen some really cool ones with actual diamonds like deep set into it,
Yeah.
which I think is super fun. So I do love that trend, and I feel like, when something is like a throwback, when it's coming from an era like the 70s, like it still has a timeless kind of vibe to it. So it's not, going to go out of style, but it's having a moment, if you will.
Exactly. And I say this to my brides all the time. The investment in an engagement ring is really in the center stone or stones. The setting itself, yes, it is expensive. You are spending money on it and it matters, but it can be changed. That is something that over 5 years, 10 years, your style evolves and your ring can evolve with you. So I think it's most important to invest in a stone that feels timeless to you, whether that's the shape or the size, something that feels like it can have longevity. For me, that's the more sentimental piece anyway.
I mean, I'm on board with that strategy. Is instead of having to like restart with the ring, just reset it, and it feels like a brand new ring, and
That's
it gives it new life.
It really does.
How many times have you reset your ring?
Okay, so I kept my original ring in its setting, but I have 3 other rings, so I'm not a good example.
You went all out. How did that conversation go down with your husband? Is it like every 3 years, or is this, what was that negotiation?
Well, I've had 2 babies, so each baby deserved a push gift, and I just celebrated my 10-year anniversary, so there you go.
That makes sense. Well, Stephanie, it's been so great chatting with you. Thank you so much for sharing all of your insights with us. Love learning about you and your business. And we will, of course, link in the show notes where people can find you on Instagram and with your website. And looking forward to following along all the colorful jewelry that you constantly are displaying for all of us to enjoy.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode. If you've enjoyed this podcast and want more inspiration and guidance, check out our new and improved wedding planning platform at loverly.com, where we offer free wedding planning tools and advice to get you hitched without a hitch. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Loverly. Happy planning!